Coming up on Tech News Today, Acer tells Microsoft to just stop, Samsung's crisis of design, and Facebook allows gambling. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, August 7th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow, send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone, and enter the promo code TNT. And by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus, more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs with automatic device scaling. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT8. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting each time with the top 10 stories in the news feeds. We talked about Matt Honon's hacking yesterday and yesterday evening. He posted his Wired article with a detailed account of the iCloud hack that wiped his iPhone and MacBook Air and iPad and hijacked his and Gizmodo's Twitter account. Most of the story was known, but Honon noted that he knows the hacker phobia got the last 4 digits of his credit card by calling Amazon customer support and then used those digits to convince Apple customer support to change Honon's iCloud password.
In response to Microsoft's decision to compete with OEM partners with its own tablet, the Surface, Acer CEO JT Wang tells the Financial Times he's told Microsoft to think twice. It will create a huge negative impact for the ecosystem, and other brands may take a negative reaction. Microsoft has acknowledged to the SEC that competing directly with manufacturers might affect their commitment to the firm's platform. Wang puts it more bluntly. He says, quote, "It's not something you are good at, so please think twice."
Wow, harsh words. Want yet another reason to be excited about the Android-powered Ouya game console? Well, Ouya announced it partnered with XBMC as its media player. XBMC says that nearly a third of Team XBMC members are Ouya backers, and that XBMC has early access to Ouya prototypes. Ouya also announced a partnership with TuneIn for all kinds of audio programming. You can still pledge to Ouya at Kickstarter for a tiny little bit more time.
You know, Facebook's young. It needs the money. So you know what that means. Gambling. Facebook began allowing an app called Bingo and Slots Frenzy, that's Frenzy with a Z, to become the first Facebook app allowed to let users play with real money. It will be available in the UK and only to users older than 18. The app is made by GameSys, operators of jackpotsomethingorother.com.
Researchers from the Korean Advanced Institute of Science and Technology are developing a high-performance, bendable lithium-ion battery. A video showing off its capabilities shows the peel and stick-type manufacturing process, allowing the cell to provide constant juice no matter how it's manipulated. Now the scientists are looking at ways to up the capacity so that they can power the next generation of fully flexible devices and bring them to market.
No more rigid devices. Want some flexibility in there. We all knew that in-app purchases were coming to Windows Phone. Recently, Microsoft published some documentation that says that developers can only add in-app products to Windows Phone 8 apps. That means Windows Phone 7 users and developers are shut out from using the feature. Looks like Microsoft's not too subtle way of getting devs on board with Windows Phone 8 now.
Craigslist has a little bit of a vendetta going on. They've been trying for weeks to stop PadMapper from displaying Craigslist apartment ad links on a map, because who would want that? 2 weeks ago, the firm filed suit against 3Taps and PadMapper, accusing them of copyright and trademark infringement. Then it changed its terms of service in a way that prohibited reposting of ads, which ruffled some users' feathers because a lot of people use the same ad copy in multiple places. Now, Craigslist has reportedly told major search engines to stop indexing its user postings. That's right. They don't want Google to index them anymore. That could cut off 3Taps, which began to scrape search engines for Craigslist postings to avoid violating those terms of service.
Not very neighborly, Craigslist. Video game publisher THQ has canceled film director Guillermo del Toro's video game project, dubbed Insane, and has handed all the rights and intellectual properties back to the filmmaker, according to a report in the LA Times. The news was announced during an analyst call by THQ's president, Jason Rubin. This is the latest in a series of cost-cutting moves by THQ to minimize the game company's annual spending on production, on marketing, and administration.
Monday saw the abusing of the expert competition in the U.S. Samsung-Apple patent battle. Samsung strategist Justin Dennison was asked about an email indicating a crisis of design at Samsung and then forced to admit that he himself had never designed a phone. Samsung retaliated by pressing Apple's expert witness, University of Pennsylvania professor Peter Bressler, to confess he was only an expert in phone design, not functions. So he knows nothing about buttons, apparently. There was also the revelation that the rounded corners of the iPhone are not exactly rounded in the same way as Samsung's corners. Dramatic testimony indeed. Today's trial kicked off with Samsung accusing Apple of tampering with photos of the Epic 4G.
Say hello to the new NVIDIA Maximus 2.0 workstation, which now has Kepler-based GPUs.
Hello.
The Kepler architecture lets the Maximus dynamically spawn new threads instead of having to go back to the CPU. That means more reliance on the GPU, less on the CPU, and less inefficiency because you're not moving data back and forth through the bus. The Maximus platform combines an NVIDIA Quadro K500 with the NVIDIA K20 GPU. Oh, and that Kepler-based Quadro K500, it's going to be available as a separate desktop GPU starting in October for about $2,300.
All right, let's take this moment to thank a sponsor for today's show, ShareFile. If you're constantly collaborating with your colleagues and clients, sharing files like your contracts, your spreadsheets, your presentations, things with sensitive information, NDA stuff, legal documents, it's essential. And these important files need to be kept safe and secure and under your control. You want to know that only the person you meant to open them got them and opened them. That's why we recommend ShareFile by Citrix, the easy-to-use business solution that allows you to exchange files quickly and securely. I use it especially because I know that the person opened them. If I send it to my accountant or my lawyer and they're like, oh yeah, I've been working on it for days, I can say, really? Because it doesn't show on ShareFile that you opened it. Oh yeah, I mean, I just opened it and I'm getting to work on it. Plus, it keeps it secure and it makes it easy to use. With ShareFile, you can send files of almost any size, no bounce max. You control who has access to the files. You can put levels of permission on different files, and it syncs automatically, so you and your team will always have the most updated materials. You can access ShareFile from anywhere, laptop, tablet, smartphone, work on the go. You don't have to take our word for it. I want you to try ShareFile with our special offer. Sign up today and receive a 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click on that radio microphone, and enter the promo code TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com. Type in the promo code TNT. We thank Citrix and ShareFile for their support of Tech News Today. All right, let's start off by talking about Acer's JT Wang. What is it that he's telling the folks?
He's talking to the Financial Times, and he's talking about the Microsoft Surface, which we knew about. The quotes, as Sarah mentioned, were, we have said to Microsoft to think it over. And think twice, because it's going to create a huge negative impact. It's not something you're good at. Now, obviously, Microsoft doesn't make hardware, so obviously how good could they be at it? But the question I'm going to ask Lauren Goode, who's here from All Things D, should Microsoft think it over, or is this something like the Palm Folio where somebody, if there's enough negative reaction before a product comes out, Microsoft should just kill it?
I think it's really tough to say at this point. I think this is a really pivotal time for Microsoft with all of their efforts in mobile, their partnership with Nokia. I think with all of their hopes sort of pinned on Windows 8 at this point, Windows Phone 8, and now the Surface. And I think for them to come out and say that they were actually getting into this hardware was, let's be honest, a pretty ballsy move. So I think it would take a lot at this point for Microsoft to actually back down from that. I'd also like to point out, and we were chatting about this earlier, guys, that this is not the first time that Acer has come out and said something about this. Now, I think that they're the only OEM that I believe, the only OEM that has publicly expressed their displeasure about this effort. But back in June, there was another Acer exec, Oliver Ahrens, who said, I don't think it's going to be successful because you cannot be a hardware player with two products. You know, Microsoft is working with 24 PC vendors worldwide. Apple is alone. Apple can do whatever it wants, but Microsoft is a component of a PC system, and that's what's going to make it difficult. Still, Microsoft seems to be charging full steam ahead on this.
What is it about Acer, you think, that's making them the ones to speak out most of this? Do they feel the most threatened by it?
You know what? That's a really good question. I don't know. I'm going to pass that one back to you guys.
Yeah, Iyaz, what do you think?
Well, I mean, Acer has, if I remember right, they own a bunch of subsidiaries, old companies like, I want to say they own Packard Bell at this point. They own a bunch of old labels. So they market a lot of different PCs under lots of old brands, so they're probably very concerned about pricing, and obviously Microsoft's going to give itself a sweetheart deal on the Windows 8 licensing compared to what Acer's going to get. So, I mean, they have a lot to lose, but Acer...
Well, but Microsoft has said we're going to sell this at the equivalent prices. So that even if they're giving themselves a sweetheart deal on the licensing, the price for consumers, they say, is going to be the same.
Well, if the prices are the same and Microsoft gives themselves a good deal, they could up the hardware compared to the other ones. But, I mean, Acer does have its hand in tablets with Android already. So they've experimented with other things. So I don't know why exactly they're speaking out. I don't know if, I mean, Acer seems to have a big mouth when it comes to this, but I guess they want to maybe be the first company to say, hey, or second company to go, look, Microsoft, you're going to tick us off. But what else could they do? I mean, do you think an Android-based solution is what they could do? I mean, Acer already has
Linux Mint, Ubuntu. I mean,
yeah, I saw that Linux article, and I have to say I was a little bit surprised by that, only because Google Android would be the most obvious solution, I think, for a lot of these OEMs because of the Google suites available online, and all of just the mobile compatibility. I mean, people are talking about mobile here, right? They're talking about Surface, they're talking about mobile, but it's a tablet, and you also want that device with a mobile phone. And so I don't see the Linux solution, but there are obviously some people that would see that as a solution for the OEMs.
If Acer didn't already have its hand in Android tablets, this would come across to me as a desperation quote, because they don't really know what they're doing. If Microsoft's going to screw them over, then it's just a little bit of a let's go public with our disappointment. But since they do, this reads to me as kind of Acer saying, listen, we're not happy. We're not happy. We're going to say that we're not happy. We're going to talk to the press. And if nothing changes, then maybe we won't work with you anymore.
Well, that'd be a pretty bold move for Acer to move out of the Windows universe. If they move it to like a boutique thing and they only have a couple of models and they start moving towards Linux or Android. I mean, Dell has tried to market Linux laptops with some success. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the way that Android is the way Linux could be for a lot of these manufacturers. They could skin it like crazy. They could create their own versions of it. Because at this point, to a lot of people, without an internet connection, without a browser, they have no real use for an operating system. They don't really understand the stuff anymore. It's like, can I go online? What do you mean I'm offline? What am I going to do all day?
Yeah, I guess the other question is, why isn't anyone else speaking up? Are they got a stronger relationship with Microsoft than Acer? Have they've got some kind of separate deals with Microsoft somehow? I mean, I'm surprised that it's only Acer that's speaking up.
I'm sure the HPs and Lenovo's and Dells of the world are not concerned because of the enterprise market. And enterprise is going to stick with Windows pretty much no matter what. And these are the areas that they service the most. When it comes to Acer, I don't believe they have as much as an enterprise focus as those other companies.
That could be it. Lauren, my apologies for not properly introducing you after the ad.
Okay.
Just throwing you into the file. But very good to have you with us from allthingsd.com. Let's talk a little bit about the Samsung and Apple crisis of design. This goes back to an email from J.K. Shin that has now been introduced as evidence. Samsung resisted allowing this as evidence, but then when they asked Dennison on the stand, Justin Dennison, who's Samsung's strategist, about the email, that brought it into the trial, and it became evidence. Shin wrote lots of inflammatory things in this email. It was an internal email. Influential figures outside the company come across the iPhone and they point out that Samsung is dozing off. Quote, when everybody talks about UX, user interface, they weigh it against the iPhone. The iPhone has become the standard. That's how things are already. Apple's iPhone, the difference is truly that of heaven and earth. It's a crisis of design. Of course, as we mentioned in the news fuse, the trial has been a lot about trying to discredit the witnesses. In fact, Apple's witness from the University of Pennsylvania, Peter Bressler, was raked over the coals on the minutia of the design elements and the measurement of the angles and the curvature of the edges. And he kept trying to say, yeah, but most people, they don't pay attention to that. They just look at it and it looks the same to them. What do you guys think of this email, though? Let's talk about this crisis of design email. Dennison tried to brush it off, saying Samsung does an excellent job of remaining very humble, self-critical, and maintaining a sense of urgency within its own ranks. And he said that email was intentionally hyperbolic to kind of shake people up.
Yeah, that's the sense I got from it, too. Somebody saying, listen, we've been going down this road. We're competing with the likes of Nokia. We've got all of this stuff that just seems like something you have to add to any UI of any phone. Now we've got this iPhone, and we just totally have to rethink everything. Let's start over. There's a new ball game. There's a new sheriff in town, whatever. And, yeah, rallying the troops. And I don't think that saying, listen, this is now the standard, because people, he even mentioned, this is all anybody talks about now. This is the gold standard of phones. So we have to compete with that gold standard. I don't think that means we have to rip off that gold standard. It just means we have to go back to the drawing board and make something that people will want over the iPhone.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Sarah. It's pretty much, I'm sure every company has a memo like this. HTC, Motorola, saying, oh my gosh, this is what the phone looks like now. Because before they had these extra buttons, or we had keypads, we had a totally different look. I mean, we had touchscreens. They were resistive. It was just a total shift in the way phones were going. And Samsung, with this kind of memo, did get on board to the point where Samsung is the #2 company when it comes to these devices, the #1 Android company when it comes to phones. So they did take this to heart and go, look, we need to have a device to compete properly in the market. It actually shows that they are, they think ahead enough to go, wait a minute, that's where the future is. We have to be there.
Mm-hmm. I'm certainly no attorney, but this just sounds like it may have been a wake-up call, and it doesn't necessarily signal any kind of intent, as Sarah said, to actually go out and copy something. I think any global corporation that has the footprint that Samsung does has to be constantly looking out for its competition. And if anything, this seems like it was probably a pretty astute note. Check this out, guys. We're gonna get beat by this. This is what everybody's talking about. Compare this to the Omnia. How does this compare? And granted, there's going to be a lot more information, I think, that's unveiled as this trial proceeds. So right now, we don't know if this is just the tip of the iceberg with this type of exchange or where this is going to lead. But from this memo, from this sole memo, and I have to give a little shout out to my colleague, Mike Isaac, at All Things that you guys were showing his article before. Yeah, it doesn't seem, it just seems like Samsung was noticing the iPhone.
Yeah, no, Mike did a great job of covering this in a couple of articles that I read. And what I got from it was Samsung is confident enough in itself to react negatively and criticize itself. I've worked in companies where they weren't very confident in their product, and any criticism or praising of a competitor would have been seen as just not done, as something like, you don't want to say that. And to me, that always felt like, oh, because we're so sensitive about how awful our own product is, we can't possibly, call attention to somebody else doing it better. Whereas this to me seems like somebody saying, hey, we're really good at this. Why are we getting our butts handed to us by the iPhone? And then the question becomes, and this is what the mindset they're trying to get the jury into, I think, is, okay, when you do that, you look at the leader and you try to come up with something which is as good. And that doesn't mean you're copying them. It means that you're inspired by them and you're trying to jumpstart your business. And that's what I think is probably Samsung's strategy here anyway, as far as the jury goes. Let's talk about gambling.
Let's.
I bet you've got a Facebook story.
Yeah, I do. I woke up this morning and said, you know what? I hope Facebook does something interesting. And sure enough, they delivered. For the first time, Facebook is going to be allowing a gaming app that lets users play with real money, not Facebook credits. And as we mentioned in the news views, this is not worldwide. This is only in the UK. The particular game is called Bingo and Slots Frenzy, which is an app that's part of a franchise from jackpotjoy.com. It will be not only just available in the UK, but all users must be over 18. How does Facebook make sure that you are over 18? Well, you have to verify your identity, your age, and your location in your accounts. And Facebook's using what it's calling age-gating technology. So any activity that's related to the games that might otherwise show up in timelines of minors will not, as long as they're not lying about their ages. Also won't show up to anybody outside of the UK. So you're not going to see ads for this game unless you're in the UK solely. Now, Facebook says financial terms of the deal are commercially confidential, so we don't know if proceeds from this particular game will be that 70-30 split.
Right. How much is the
that
house
Facebook,
taking?
That
right?
Facebook uses for credits, but I assume it's similar. And you know, the UK is highly regulated gambling, but something that is easier to do. They don't have the same kind of rules certainly as in the U.S. And Facebook says that's exactly why they're trying it out in this market. The actual statement from a spokesperson was, quote, "Real money gaming is a popular, well-regulated activity in the UK. We're allowing a partner to offer their games to adult users on the Facebook platform in a safe and controlled manner. And we already know Mark Pincus, CEO of Zynga, has said we're planning to introduce social gambling next year. That's in 2013. Facebook's just beating them to the punch here. It looks to me like, yeah, they're trying it out in a controlled market. I mean, it's an app called Bingo and Slots Frenzy. I mean, I guess if you've got a gambling addiction, you might be in trouble, but it's not necessarily going to appeal to just anybody.
Well, that's
because you can use your own money.
That's a fair question. Is, you know, does Facebook have added responsibilities in putting an actual gambling app out?
Because somebody might not be able to stop?
Yeah, because there is such a real thing as gambling addiction, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is though, okay, like gambling addiction, you know, part of the problem is that people run out of money and then they get in financial trouble, but it's also a gambling addiction because you're doing it too much. You could say that the virtual money games are feeding the same kind of addiction already. Yeah. If you can't stop playing Farmville, then that's your problem.
The damage is more limited. The damage is your time versus your actual money.
Well, maybe you're ruining your relationship.
And this is not a new conversation. Obviously, there have been gambling sites out on the internet for a long time that even people in the United States can access, whether they're supposed to be able to or not.
I think, yeah, there are many people out there who engage in a little innocent gambling here and there, and it's not a big deal. This does seem like it could really end up verging on irresponsible. And we're probably going to start hearing stories about how somebody lost all of their money on Facebook, particularly if there are more games that roll out. If Bingo and Slots Frenzy ends up being successful for all parties involved. And at that point, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if Facebook makes enough money, though, on, you know, their rev share, I can't imagine them saying, you know what, we've decided that gambling addiction is just too scary of a thought. We can't do it to these poor people. It's not really how Facebook works.
I mean, I don't know if Facebook has a responsibility. I mean, to a lot of, like I say this a lot of times, but to a lot of people, Facebook is the internet, and if it's not on Facebook, it doesn't exist. So the fact that gambling sites are available pretty much in another tab isn't, you know, that's not so crazy. But for Facebook to get into this, it's just showing that they know that they need to keep figuring out how to expand, because there's only so many people you can get on Earth to be on Facebook. What else could you possibly do? And if it's catering to gambling or catering to other interests, it just seems like they just need to figure out what else could they approach to continue to increase their user base.
Why don't they sell painkillers too, or put porn up there?
I'm sure if it's legal in a country, they might do it.
It's legal to put porn up.
Well, I would imagine that.
I don't want to overhype it, but I think it's something, especially when you're talking about Facebook, where they are under the gun for all kinds of things, much less controversial than gambling. When they go and put a gambling site out there, the first story that comes along of somebody losing all their money because they were sucked into this is going to put pressure on Facebook to not necessarily ban the gambling app, because like Sarah says, there's a lot of money there, but to take proactive measures to maybe limit the amount of money that can be lost on it, or possibly do a counter campaign of education and provide easy links to therapy centers or getting help. I can absolutely see that in a way, because
seems like a great way for Facebook to get a lot more personal data from you. Can we get your routing number on your bank account? We just want to make sure that you don't deplete it.
What do you think of this, Lauren?
Sarah, I think less about the social responsibility, although I do agree that is there, and obviously Facebook has come under some heat for privacy issues. But Sarah, you mentioned earlier what Mark Pincus of Zynga has said about his company planning to introduce social gaming next year, and that makes me question whether or not this is something that Facebook and Zynga are going to work towards together, considering how much of Facebook's revenue comes from Zynga games, or if this is something that you're going to see this sort of divergent path these two companies take, as Facebook tries to glean revenue from other game or gambling partners now in this case, and as Zynga has started to make its own baby steps towards its own platform with Zynga.com, right? So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, Facebook has tried to distance itself from Zynga. They don't want a majority of their revenue coming from Zynga. I mean, it wasn't a majority to begin with, but they're trying to distance themselves. Zynga, I feel like, is in more of a position to say, we actually need to introduce real gambling to our games because we want those users who aren't interested in like childish games or games that, you know, aren't for the real thing. And that's, I think that's just the next direction for Zynga because they kind of have to go in that direction. They want that much user engagement. But the people already are, the reviews are very mixed on Zynga and how the company looks to the general public. And I don't know. I mean, I guess if Facebook was really stretched, like we don't have other good revenue ideas. We're a publicly traded company and we're in deep water here. Maybe I can see them partnering up, but I don't know. I feel like Facebook doesn't want that much to do with Zynga, as certainly as far as gambling goes.
Well, I think they definitely want to diversify from Zynga.
Yeah.
I think that is a fair point. They want to find more than just Zynga as a main revenue source. Obviously, they're after all kinds of money-making opportunities out there. Let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor, thenewsquarespace.com. Now faster and easier than ever to create a high-quality website that is adaptable to any screen your visitors look at. The new Squarespace is in HTML5. It's in CSS3. It's got new JavaScript foundations, but you don't have to know any of that. All you have to know is that you can pick a template that looks good to you, tweak it to your desire, change some colors, change some layout options. It's easy in the new Squarespace interface. And then when your visitors come, if they're on a phone, your images are automatically resized. They're resized in 7 different formats, so they fit the screen right. If they come in a tablet, it fits that screen. It looks like you've hired a whole huge team of designers to make hundreds of versions of your site, but it's all done automatically and easily, and Squarespace is just as easy to use as it used to be. They've got all kinds of cool plugins. You can put photo galleries. You can integrate it with Facebook, with Twitter, with Google+, with Instagram, with Foursquare, Dropbox. The list goes on and on and on. But you don't have to take our word for it. Of course, you can sign up for a free trial right now, and you don't have to give them a credit card. You don't have to give them any information except the name of your site, and just play around with it. Move some stuff around. Try it out. See if you like it. And if you do, and you want to purchase it, use the offer code TNT8. What does that get you? 10% off your first purchase on new Squarespace accounts. That includes not only the monthly plan, but the annual plan. So if you buy a year at once, you save even more. You get 10% off the whole year. And with the annual plan, you get free domain registration so you can have your own domain name that's yours to keep as well. That's squarespace.com. Use the offer code TNT8. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Sarah, back to you.
Tom?
We mentioned this briefly at the end of the show yesterday, but Apple has yanked the YouTube out from iOS 6. Should we be shocked?
Well, okay, so first of all, this is still the beta version of iOS 6, although the YouTube app was part of previous beta versions. So this looks to you know, when this was discovered yesterday, it looks like, okay, this is the way that we're going. Apple has confirmed that their license to include YouTube in iOS had expired. But Google also issued a statement saying, we're working with Apple to ensure that we have the best possible YouTube experience for iOS users. When I first looked at this, it's like, okay, you know, Apple's getting rid of Google Maps. Now they're getting rid of YouTube, obviously owned by Google. Wow, they're just going to wipe Google clean. But it's not like Apple has some sort of a YouTube competitor, and YouTube is still going to work in Safari. And really, Apple has been kind of at the forefront of ensuring that videos can be played via HTML5 so that they don't really, it's kind of like they got what they wanted.
Yeah.
The YouTube experience works just fine. And it's kind of an opportunity, really, if the YouTube app is not embedded in iOS code, that they, as long as they get admitted to the App Store like everybody else, and Google already has quite a few apps in the App Store that do really well, work just fine. So it's not as if Apple's shutting them out. They have the opportunity to not only make the YouTube app better, but update it more regularly.
Yeah, I think it's actually good for YouTube users because of that. Because you can get a better YouTube app than you've got right now. It may not be so good for YouTube because it's not automatically exposed to everybody who buys an iPhone. But I don't think YouTube has a big discoverability problem, so that's less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've got a few instances where you can you can upload a video to YouTube that's baked into iOS, and that might be slightly more annoying to do. Actually,
I was. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Sarah, but I was wondering about that because, if you go to YouTube's stat page, more than 10% of YouTube's views come from mobile devices, right, which is a pretty significant number. But then on the uploading side, that's pretty significant for YouTube from mobile as well. They say something like 3 hours of video every minute is uploaded to YouTube from mobile devices, and you have to imagine that a significant chunk of that is from iPhone. Now, from my understanding that in iOS 6, when you go to your camera roll to upload a video, there still is that direct send to YouTube option for users. So in terms of YouTube getting videos from mobile consumers, that might still be an option. I know on Mountain Lion, Apple went with Vimeo, I think, is their easy share option for video, right? So it seems like maybe they could have done that with iOS 6 and said, okay, well, we're just going to make everybody share to Vimeo, and you still have that YouTube option. So I think that's a good thing. Going to Safari, though, to upload, or going to Safari to view, and that doesn't seem like it's an ideal option from a user experience perspective at all. I think everyone's been really focused on the viewing experience, and that is very important both from user experience and from an ad revenue perspective, of course. But I think we also have to remember just uploads, how important the upload experience is.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I wouldn't be entirely shocked because iOS 6 isn't in final form yet.
Right.
If there was a last-minute change and all of a sudden iOS 6 says, oh, we upload to Vimeo now. Since there is already that relationship, I wouldn't be shocked either way. Put it that way. If YouTube stays as an upload option, or they just add Vimeo as an option, I think any of those things could still happen. But it is an important point. I actually sometimes use the YouTube website in Safari on the iPhone because the YouTube app is so darn old that there are certain things that I can't find or make it do, and I have to actually go to the mobile site to make it work.
Yeah,
Tom, you don't like the old TV icon with the dials?
I really liked it 5 years ago when it first came out, but it could use a little update.
The problem is that it acts like an old TV.
Exactly. I have to hit it on the side and get reception.
Has some rabbit ears on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that YouTube app is just outdated and old. Like you were saying, Tom, there are features that are missing from it. The mobile experience for YouTube is way better. And I find I'm using the browsers on my mobile devices like I do my desktop. So I will open a new tab to go to YouTube. I'm using that a lot more for viewing experiences than I was the app because I don't like getting switched out of what I'm doing, especially when I want to switch tabs. And it would be so easy for Google to add to their Google app another application that says YouTube or their own version of YouTube, which could just be a skin for its mobile site, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, it's why iBooks is a separate app from the operating system, because Apple wants to be able to rev it more often than they rev the operating system. So I think that overall it's a good thing for Google. It's just a fallout from the fact that the licensing agreement with Google and Apple has ended, and I don't think there's a ton of bad blood. A lot of people are trying to stoke those fires. I think it's just, it's business. Probably should have talked about this next story when we were talking about the Facebook app, because it involves implications for Zynga as well. Amazon has launched the Amazon Game Studios. Their first game, Living Classics, is a game on Facebook, revolves around 3 cute little foxes. Actually, they look kind of like Crickfalusi sort of animations from Ren and Stimpy. They get lost wandering around illustrations tied to children's book classics like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, that kind of stuff. It's very much a kid's game. You have to click on things that are moving to gain points. And it really, really wants you to share. Every time you finish a page or part of the game, it gives you a big green button that says share. It's trying to trick you into showering everyone with the fact that you're playing this game. And there's a little X up in the top up in the top right. I found it a little buggy too when I was playing it earlier, or maybe I'm just not very good at it. I don't know. But
you're not the right demo.
Yeah, definitely not the right demo. How much worse can it get for Zynga? Their stock has taken a beating, and now they've got Amazon competing with them. Or is this sort of a non-starter? Is Amazon overreaching itself? It seems like they're trying to do with games, or at least app-type games, what they have been successful with in books, and to a lesser extent, videos.
Now, just to be clear, does this game include in-app purchases? I mean, since it's kids playing it, are they going to be making are they going to be buying virtual goods through something like this?
I didn't play it far enough in to see if it was trying to solicit me for in-app purchases. But if it's in there, it's definitely not front and center. It's not essential to the gameplay.
Mm-hmm. This is the sort of thing where it seems like the Facebook platform is just a great testing ground. If this is the sort of game that gets really, really Amazon a lot of success, it starts to put in people's minds, oh yeah, Amazon makes games. Yeah, they have got that game for kid. My kid loves that game. Then yeah, you bring it over to the Kindle apps, and now you've got just one other facet of the Amazon ecosystem that makes you want to buy their products. I don't think that they lose anything by working with Facebook here.
Add coins and cash. I'm investigating for you, Lauren. It does seem that there is some kind of option here, but it's not coming up for me.
Well, I mean,
because go ahead. Sorry, Iyaz.
That's okay. I was thinking. I mean, Amazon is so into content. It has its own movie studios. It's making games. I mean, just throwing on Facebook because they can. It seems like that's why I think they're doing this, because we're going to see this on the Kindle Fire. We're going to see this on whatever other devices come out, because Amazon wants to make sure they have content for whatever devices they have. And once they have your credit card information, which they always have, with that one click, it'll be so easy to do all the in-app purchases all you want.
To spend $100 up to buy 660 cash bucks. So yeah, not only in-app purchases, but you could drop a nice chunk of money on this.
Right. So I think that's the differentiator, and I just brought up a good point. Amazon, as we know, is just the king of that one-click purchase, making everything super easy to buy, and that's where I think, Amazon also is a very trusted brand, right? So it seems like they throw lots of mud at the wall, as we know right now, just to see what sticks. They just got their hands in everything. So purchasing, I think, in-game would be what would maybe make it the biggest threat to a company like Zynga. I'm
seriously just kind of distracted and stunned by the fact that they give you the option to spend $100 on this little, find the moving thing.
And that's a kid's game, right?
Yeah. Well, it seems like it to me. I don't know if that's what it's intended.
Aren't kids not supposed to be on Facebook? Who's going to see your shares?
Well, 13-year-old, 13 and up. So
I don't know. I mean, that little video we saw didn't look like anything I would want to play when I was 13. Looked like something like the kids you babysit would want to play. But I don't know. Maybe kids have
I didn't play
regressed.
it very much, so maybe it gets clever, or maybe it gets more fun for adults later on. I have no idea.
Gets really scary. A lot of sword.
It turns into a first-person shooter about 5th level in.
You're just blowing away.
Wonderland. There's a rocket.
Let's finish up with the rumors that Google might be selling its set-top box division.
Yeah, sources are telling Light Reading Cable that Google's going to put up Motorola Home. That's Motorola Mobility's home division, and that division makes cable modem, set-top boxes, video processors, cable modem termination systems, video navigation software, a little bit more. According to the sources, the timing could be as early as next month, and with an initial round of bids in October. Another source says it could take longer than that. So it looks like this year, though, that Google might be getting rid of Motorola Home. Now, apparently Google's going to be quite tight-fisted with who they will talk to. Apparently, it looks like there'll be a very small chance that ZTE or Huawei would get a chance to bid. I don't know if it's some kind of deal with Google and the DOJ or what, because those companies are Chinese companies, and Huawei's got a bit of heat with the U.S. government. Lauren, do you think it makes sense for Google to get rid of set-top boxes, considering they had that Nexus Q thing, and they could probably do something better with
Google TV?
You're saying that because they had the Nexus Q and they could do something better? I mean, doesn't that just kind of prove that they have attempted to do something outside of
and that's what I'm saying.
They should have their Moto Mobility, right?
That's what I'm saying. They should keep home so they could do something better than the Q.
Oh, so they can do something better than the Q. I'm thinking of what you're putting down.
Yeah,
now.
I think when they purchase. Go ahead, Lauren.
Go ahead. I was just going to say the hardware for Google TV has been a struggle for them. We saw what happened last year with their attempts it was the Logitech review, correct? And Logitech came out and said this was a failure for us. And I personally don't know anybody that's using the Google Logitech review at home.
I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Tom. Now I know somebody, anecdotally. But, I mean, I think it's been a little bit of a struggle for Google, whether that means that they should hold on to Moto Mobility Home because it just bolsters their hardware potentially, and perhaps those patents, I don't know. I mean, or whether or not they should just try to innovate in-house. It's really hard for me to say. It also sounds like this is just This has not been widely reported yet. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I really can't comment much on this one.
Yeah, it's definitely quite a flimsy rumor at this point. But I think the idea of whether Google keeps the set-top box division or not is an interesting question, whether this rumor itself turns out to be true or not, because I think it's significant in Google's strategy with the Motorola acquisition. We all know they bought Motorola to get the patents. Now they have the patents. They're going to hold on to those. They've also said, we're going to not involve ourselves with the running of the hardware business at all. We're going to keep that as at arm's length, which is a very interesting thing to say. If they were to divest themselves of the set-top box division, that seems to me to be an indication that they might, down the road, divest themselves of the handset business as well, because it would make sense for them to integrate set-top box into Google because they are believers in Google TV. They want Google TV to succeed. They're out there pushing it with partners, and one would think that they could use that set-top box division to make a really good box. But if Google is really set on making the software and not the hardware, then it would make sense for them to sell off the set-top box division and just concentrate on making software that's really good and have their partners like Sony and Vizio, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder then, though, if they would keep the phone business at that point, and then eventually it would end up being that, yeah, they bought Motorola to get the patents, and they got the patents, and then they sold it off.
I think Lauren made a good point about the fact that Google didn't make the queue in-house, so that probably means they have a bunch of redundant departments at this point. I mean, just like the set-top box, why would they need one if they have the queue, whoever built the queue for them? As for the handset one, it wouldn't surprise me if they had their own division that's been working on it for a while. So that would probably mean that somebody else could get Motorola handsets division, although I don't know who would want to pick it up.
If I'm right, I think the queue came out of a 20% time project. It's more interesting. It's less. The queue to me is less interesting than the actual Google TV division that's been working with Logitech on the review, and that didn't work. But now working with Sony and now working with Vizio. But we will have to wait and see. Let's move on.
Also, keep in mind, just
Sorry.
that's okay.
Sky flag got us again. Go ahead.
That was random.
Oh, did you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Well, I was just going to point out, too, now with some Google TV software being built directly into television sets, which I think we'll see more and more of as the TV sets themselves get the type of, dual band processors and souped-up processors needed to power that kind of video streaming. How significant is the set-top box at all? And that was just what I wanted to end with.
That's a really good point, because Motorola sells a lot of their set-top boxes to cable companies, not to end consumers. And Google may just look at that and say, that's dead-end business. We need to get out of that business. That's an excellent point. All right, now we can randomizer.
Yeah, okay. We'll play it again, sure.
Randomizer.
Lots of stuff coming out of the Mars Curiosity rover, including a video of the dramatic descent. This is actually a series of stills. There'll be a higher resolution video that's being created and sent back, but everything takes a little while to get to Mars, especially when, we'll get to that in a minute. The processing power is not so big on the rover, but still pretty dramatic to see this sort of stop motion compilation of all these slides as it plummets. This is the parachute part of the descent towards the surface of Mars. There's also the first color picture from the surface of Mars. That's the third link in there, Jason, which shows sort of a landscape scene. Looks like there's a bit of a dust storm kicked up. There may just be dust on the lens. I don't know. But that's...
Look at that Instagram.
Yeah, right?
Great filter.
That is the best Instagram I've
Mars
ever
filter.
seen. Yeah, that's going to be a new Instagram filter, isn't it? It's the Martian landscape. And that's from the foot of the mountain in Gale Crater that the rover will eventually be ascending. But then you were pointing out, Iyaz, that the specs on Curiosity are pretty interesting, and it needed an OS upgrade.
I'm loving this. I mean, it's got 2 gigs of memory, 256 megabytes of DRAM. It's got a 200 megahertz PowerPC CPU. Okay, this is what I don't get. They spent $2.5 billion to get this thing there, and they put, a calculator in there? Like, it has the guts of my watch or something. And it does need an OS upgrade, which I am just terrified of. How exactly are you going to do that and make sure you don't brick the Curiosity when it's sitting on Mars? It's not like you can send a technician over to go fix it.
They do OS upgrades all the time, right? On probes like Voyager, even that they've done OS upgrades. So they're good at it. They've got a lot of practice.
It's just in the crazy plan where it's okay, we're going to fire this thing off. It's going to parachute. This is going to happen. This is going to work. And then we're going to do an OS upgrade instead of doing it on Earth. It's like, okay, I guess it's just par for the course. It's on the list of crazy.
CR1 wants to know what kind of data plan they're on, because that just must be the roaming charges must be crazy for the rover. No, sorry, CR1, I tried.
40 megabits per
You
second
just
connection
get
to Earth.
an international SIM.
Yeah,
Intergalactic.
you just get an
Well,
interplanetary.
no, it's still in the
SIM.
same galaxy.
Interplanetary.
Interplanetary
Yeah,
SIM.
that works.
Yeah.
I love how the article says that it's going to be, it's a major risk factor. It's going to be one of the riskiest moments so far because, traveling towards another planet at 13 miles per hour was not one of the riskier
Yeah, right.
moments.
That's
It's the OS upgrade.
It does say something about OS upgrades, right? Let's move on to the calendar.
Tomorrow we got some stuff coming to T-Mobile. The My Touch and My Touch Q are each arriving for $50. Plus, the Samsung Galaxy Note is landing at T-Mobile for $250. The exhibition portion of SIGGRAPH has begun in LA. It runs today through the 9th. And finally, Motorola is kind of hinting at a Friday LTE phone reveal. And the rumors are flying. Could it be the Razr HD?
Who knows?
We'll find out.
Friday.
Yeah.
Let's see what's incoming.
There we go.
Incoming message.
Got a voicemail from Vince in Canada commenting on the EA lawsuit we were talking about yesterday.
Hey guys, this is Vince Ecom calling from Saskatchewan, Canada in regards to your story about EA suing Zynga for similarities between The Sims and Zynga's game The Ville. This isn't the first time that something like this has happened. In 1994, Capcom, the makers of Street Fighter II, sued Data East over their game Fighter's history due to what Capcom felt were infringements on Street Fighter II. Capcom lost the case on the grounds that the copied elements were mandatory for a game of its type, i.e., if you're doing a fighting game, there has to be fighting in it, and thus it was excluded from copyright. This just goes to show that there's nothing new under the sun. Love the show. Bye.
Yeah, no, it's good historical perspective, and that is what the case will turn on, is whether it's just essential to simulate humans sitting on a couch to make them look that way.
A three-quarters view and the same television? Yeah, we'll see if it's essential to copy verbatim.
Got an email from Gordon. Gordon in the chat room a lot. Thanks for emailing us, Gordon. He used to work as a game designer, and he says, I used to work for a company that was trying to create a Facebook game that actually did have some fairly different game mechanics. It had some of the standard stuff in there, but there were genuinely new innovations that would have distinguished the game nicely from the rest of the games on the site. Unfortunately, as great as the game was, upper management looked at it and got frightened that it was too different. They wanted to stick to the sure ground, the safe path of the tried and true. We've all heard this story before, I'm sure. So there's another pressure to say, don't make it too different, or people won't play it.
Got another email from Gav Wyman. Hey there, TNT crew. As reported in Wired UK, the European Commission has launched a public consultation on net neutrality in the EU. This has and continues to be a big issue in the US and internationally. So I wondered if you could promote this consultation to your European viewers. He says that it's kind of a long URL, and it is. We can put it in our show notes. He says, but I've created an easier URL, tinyurl.com/EU net neutrality. So that's the letter E, letter U, net neutrality. The online form is standard government issue and pretty crappy at best. Love the show, especially at the new time slot.
Well, thanks, Gav.
Thanks, Gav.
I'm glad it's working for you.
Yeah, and thanks for making that for us.
All right, that's it for this edition of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody, in our subreddit, as usual, technewstoday.reddit.com. A place to go to see what kind of stuff other folks in the audience would like us to cover, and you can vote on it as well. You can even submit URLs yourself if you want to. Lauren Goode, I'm going to give you a proper introduction finally. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Beginning of the show. Hey, you know what? We would have talked about it today, but we've kind of covered it. You have a great article up about prepaid phones at allthingsd.com, and you really go into detail about the advantages and disadvantages of that.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for pointing it out. Yeah, it was a column that ran yesterday. There's some data that shows that U.S. mobile phone subscribers are increasingly looking towards prepaid plans, right? And these are both people that maybe didn't have a wireless contract before and are looking at their phone options. And in some cases, it's contract customers that are now saying, okay, well, prepaid doesn't look all that bad. I can get an iPhone, I can get a Samsung Galaxy Nexus, I can get a Samsung Galaxy S3, and all the different kinds of hardware and data plans. So I just did a little explainer of some of the options, just some of the options that are available to consumers in the U.S. But thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, go read it, folks. allthingsd.com. Anything else to plug or mention that's coming up?
No, I think you just said go to allthingsd.com, which is all we needed.
Okay,
so.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can give us an email by sending it to tnt@twit.tv. And call, leave us a voicemail. You can send it as an MP3 attachment to the email address or just call 260-TNT show. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll have Julio Ojeda Zapata on the show tomorrow. See you then.